hosting me here in this wonderful weather here in Washington State. And I'm honored to be here with you all and to be here with my dear and abiding friend, Mr. Daniel Johnson, who does an extraordinary job wherever he goes of forging connections between disparate communities and bringing them together under the rubric of exploring our mutual interests and our common cause to make certain that this nation represents the best of its diverse heritage and tradition. Let's give him some love and applause. Now I want to talk with you briefly, and then we'll have more of a conversation about Martin Luther King Jr. and about King then and now. When we think about the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. is one of the most incredible and courageous figures in the history of this nation, when we think about the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. continues to be an extraordinary figure, worthy of our consideration, and worthy, I'm trying to shut this down, there it is, worthy of our recollection, and worthy of our meditation upon his meaning. We think about Dr. King in his own time, and we think about Dr. King in our own time. And when we think about King then and now, I think we are left with the impression that most people now see King as an American hero. After all, he has a statue on the National Mall, where I live in Washington, D.C. That statue rises 11 feet above the nearest memorial on your eye line, looking out at the Washington or Jefferson and even Lincoln memorials, to show that even in death, Dr. King continues to break barriers and set records. But many of us think of him as an American hero. After all, a holiday is named after him, the only single American after whom a holiday is named. We think of him as a hero. After all, we celebrate him every year. We sing "We Shall Overcome." We recite portions of his magnificent speech, "I Have a Dream." But when we begin to dig beneath the surface and discover how Dr. King was received then, it ain't like it is now. Right. Now he is proclaimed as an American hero. Now he is seen as someone worthy of our support. But do you realize back then he was seen as a dangerous Negro? The second in command of the FBI said he was the most dangerous Negro leader in America. Dr. King? The one who promoted nonviolence? Yes. Now he is seen as an icon worthy of our support. But back then, several clergymen, about 7 of them, 8 Protestant clergymen and 1 Jewish rabbi, wrote him a letter asking him to slow down because he wanted stuff too fast and too much. And Dr. King wrote his now famous letter from a Birmingham jail, beginning on the ends of newspapers that were then smuggled out because he was in jail. He wasn't selling crack. He wasn't trying to do anything morally untoward. He was in jail because he was trying to bring justice in America. And in Birmingham, the Negro, as we were then called, could not vote, could not eat at the same restaurant as white brothers and sisters, couldn't get a cup of coffee at the same place, couldn't eat a hamburger at the same lunch counter, couldn't travel together, couldn't stay in hotels. And so he was upset with that situation, as were most black people, and then began to protest against it and got sent to jail. Then when he was in jail, he wrote this letter responding to this clergyman, because he said, at first it upset me that you thought that I was not being gracious and I wasn't doing the right thing. And he said, you called me an extremist. And he said, that upset me, but then I thought about it. It's not whether or not you're an extremist, but what you're an extremist for. And so he said, Mahatma Gandhi was an extremist for nonviolence. Jesus was an extremist for love. So Martin Luther King Jr. was seen as a person who was out of step with the moral order of the universe, and therefore these clergymen said to him in the name of God that he ought to slow down. That's what they said then. Now he's recognized, of course, for his notion of the fierce urgency of now. And Dr. King said it's always the right time to do the right thing. There's no wrong time to do the right thing. And when we think about him now, we think about this beloved figure that we all adore. And yet he was murdered April 4th, about 6:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 1968. On a desolate balcony in Memphis, Tennessee, at a motel where he had relocated because some of the Negroes had been critical of him for staying in a white hotel, so he moved to the black motel. Sometimes doing the right thing will kill you. Or sometimes people thinking you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, and they have a narrow interpretation, will lead to your destruction. And so he moved over to the Lorraine Motel, and there in room 306, outside that door, he met his end. As his best friend in the world, who had just introduced him the night before he was murdered, he gave arguably the greatest speech of his life. Back then, King was known for several speeches. Right now, we know him for I Have a Dream. He had more than one album. He had more than one hit. Even Cardi B got 4 in the top 200, breaking the Queen Beyonce record. What? Right? Y'all don't know what I'm talking about, I guess. If you see me, I don't speak to you, I don't look at you. Her and the man offset. Oh, y'all out there, y'all alive, I see, okay. And so he had more than one album, more than one song, more than one speech. The night before he was murdered, Ralph Abernathy, his best friend, introduced him, because the thing is, he wasn't feeling well. Y'all think y'all don't feel well and don't go to school. You think, well, I'm not going to show up. I got a cough. I got a little cold. I got a little allergy. I got a little didn't study for my class-ism. And so Martin Luther King Jr. didn't feel well, but he was overworked. 39 years old. He gave something like 370 speeches a year, ain't but 365 days in the year. You think you're working hard? Get on your job, cousin. Stay on your grind. Don't bitch and complain. Oh my God, I've got to go to school. Got to go here again. It's raining. I don't feel like it. Man up, woman up, person up, human being up, right? This man, it was raining cats and dogs. Now, he didn't want to go that night. He didn't feel well. Plus, he didn't like no little old audience. One of the vanities of a man of his stature. And he's in his hotel room. And Abernathy had gone over his best friend. He said, Doc, this audience is for you. They don't want to hear nobody but you. They don't want to hear a substitute name. Plus, there's a bunch of people out here, even in the driving rain. And King came, got up, got shaved, and then went over to Mason Temple to be greeted by a couple thousand people waiting to hear him talk. And he didn't want to go before, because if it was a small audience, the newspapers would say Dr. King is losing his appeal. Now he's a world-famous figure who posthumously packs out audiences and people come to celebrate him. But then he was not as popular as he had once been. Then, for the first time in 1967, he didn't make America's most admired men list for the first time in 10 years. Speaking out against the war in Vietnam, talking about poverty and militarism, racism. And so he didn't make that list. No American publisher wanted to publish his book, and very few universities wanted to hear him talk. The man who was now universally acclaimed as one of the greatest speakers of all time, and one of the greatest preachers, and one of the greatest thinkers, and one of the greatest social activists, was at a low point of his popularity. And so they called him and he got on out. He was clinically depressed too, in case you must know. Why wouldn't he be? They're trying to kill him every day. Now he's seen as a beacon of hope and transcending despair, but then he was clinically depressed. The medicine that his doctors gave him had ceased working, and they recommended that he drink a bit at night to try to soothe the anxiety and to dismiss the demons that tore at his soul. And so King got up, got dressed, got in the car, and got over there that night. And when he came in, it was raining cats and dogs. As I said, he didn't like flying, so you know it was a rough flight. And then he said they stopped the plane and said they had to search it for bombs, because he said the announcer came on and said, we don't want to disturb it, but we do have Dr. King on the plane today, and we got to do a search for bombs. This Prince of Peace, people wanted to murder him because he wanted peace. Isn't it difficult to understand? Why is it that a man who was invested in truth and justice and freedom was seen as an American scourge and pariah, not a prophet? And so he got to the stadium, got to the house that night. Ralph Abernathy introduced him. He did often, but that night he took his time, and half an hour he introduced his friend. He later reflected on that, saying he didn't know it was going to be the last time that he introduced King. It was a strange week anyway. King had sent his wife some flowers for the first time, and only time in his life. He sent her artificial flowers.
Whoa.
He had never done that before. She said maybe he had a sense that they were going to have to last a lifetime.
Wow.
It was not difficult to have premonition when they are threatening your life every day. Every day, somebody wanted to murder him. Every day, somebody wanted to take him out. Every day, they wanted him to stop breathing. Every day, they thought he was a problem. Every day, they thought he was a Negro out of his mind. Every day, they thought he was dangerous. Every day, they thought he was a terror. Every day, they thought he was a problem. And so he got there that night, and he said, all I ask, America, is be true to what you said on paper. If you said it, live it. If you wrote those majestic words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, all people are created equal with inalienable rights among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then live that. If you wrote it, be about it.
Yes.
And then the next day, a shot rang out, shattering his jaw, ripping his necktie and cutting it off. And King lay on that balcony with his legs doing something like a bicycle gesture. Couldn't speak. His best friend went into the room and grabbed a mason jar and extracted a cardboard from a recently laundered shirt and then scooped the blood up into the jar, saying, this is the death of the prophet who died for us. Now we see king as a success. Now we see king as somebody who never faced opposition. Now we see king as somebody who was celebrated. You can't meet a white person that didn't love him and a black person that didn't march with him. Oh yeah, I marched with Dr. King back in 1910. Okay, he wasn't born in 29, but all right, I mean, guess you anticipated his birth. Back then, we thought it was only black and white, but now we know it's more complicated. Pacific Rim, Latinos, Latinx, black, brown, red, yellow, across the rainbow of colors. Race is a more complicated phenomenon. You live in Seattle, you see that. You see the intermixtures of races. You also see that this becomes one of the spots for white terrorists. The Northwest, known for its open-mindedness from Portland to Seattle, and at the same time it becomes an attraction to bigots. And so when we think about King then, we know that he was seen as a pariah. He was seen as a person who was a problem. And it's hard for you as young people to understand that, because you now see through the lens of the present. But when you put on those binoculars and take a look back into your past, you will see that white supremacy, social injustice, economic inequality were very much tangible and visceral and real. Back then we saw that, but now we even see some of it resurgent, don't we?
Yes.
Out in Charlottesville, where you got well-coiffed young white men singing dastardly tunes to an evil empire of hate. Word about Jews taking over, black people taking over, gays and lesbians taking over. Back then, we weren't even talking about gender, much less sexual orientation. Right now, we got to talk about it. King now would have to address it. King then didn't. A victim of his own time, a product of his own era. He would have to open his mind about gender as well, but he would have, I trust, or been forced to do so. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yes.
And that means you can't have your pet peeve. Oh, my thing is race, but you ain't concerned about class, or you ain't concerned about gender. You're not concerned about sexual orientation. You got all these senators who are concerned about Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, but they don't care about the dreamers who are here. People came here through successive waves of immigration. Think about it. In the 1800s, well into the 1900s, they were keeping Chinese out with the Chinese Exclusion Act. That's the immigration policy we had. Then they had a gentleman's agreement with Japan not to have any Japanese here. Then in 52, they had one where they're trying to keep the communists and the anarchists out. Not until 1965 did we have a reform of immigration where we began to accept people from Haiti and the broader Caribbean and from African countries. We began to expand it beyond Eastern and Western Europe. You know, the shithole countries.
Yeah.
We know where the shithole is. Beneath the nose and above the chin of the executive of the United States of America.
Yes.
Amen.
Wow.
Now, I respect you. This is nonpartisan. If you voted for him, God bless you. If you support those viewpoints, I'm not mad. But I would ask you to think about what it might mean. Every day a man stands up with the greatest power arguably in the world. He ain't reading. He don't read position papers. He doesn't think critically about the world. He doesn't read anything. He ain't even reading comic books. Jesus, maybe if he even read Black Panther. Read a play. Read a newspaper. You watch Fox News all day. It can warp you. And then he stands up to tweet. Every morning, he excretes the feces of his moral depravity into a world he has turned into his psychic commode. I'm sorry. I know that's rather rough.
Tell the truth.
But for a man who doesn't like Mexicans, doesn't like Muslims, doesn't like black people, don't like women, bragging about grabbing things, what kind of man are you? Predatory behavior, fetishizing a kind of masculinist ego, a toxic masculinity. Those of us who are black or brown or red or yellow or women or gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, queer, we can't afford to not like each other.
Yes.
Back then, we thought we had divided the world up. According to, if you're into civil rights, the king shouted that even back then. He said, I'm for civil rights and I'm against the war in Vietnam. That was intersectionality before it had a name. He said, I'm not going to tell young black people in Watts, in Harlem, in the inner city, not to be violent when my government is the most violent thing in the world today. The greatest purveyor of violence in the world. He said, bombs are dropping in Vietnam, but they're exploding back home. And so you can't afford to have your own pet peeve. You black, but you don't like gay people. Slow down with that.
Yeah.
You hail from the Pacific Rim, but you ain't feeling the Mexicans. You Mexicans don't like the blacks who are dark. You bring it from your country, then over here. You're straight, but you don't like the gays. What is this? We are all in the same boat.
Yes.
Right? If you don't like Mexicans and Muslims and black people and gay people, that's 3/4 of the world. We got to get together. I was preaching at a black church the other day, and a woman came to me and said, you know you're going to hell.
Uh-oh.
I said, did Jesus tell you that already?
Got it.
I guess I don't have to watch my cholesterol. I'm going to get some ezels then. She said, you know you're going to hell. I said, really? Hey, man, that's kind of, you got me shook up. She said, yeah, you out here preaching that God made gay people. I said, well, damn, who made them? You mean there's something else? Who's the bad Christian now? What, you got another God out there cooking people up? In a test tube?
Whoa.
What's up? Oh, you're being smart. You're saying God made gay people? Who made them? I know what she meant. She's trying to say, did you think, I said, I thought you thought God was perfect and everything God made was perfect. Are you telling me God messed up? Whose theology is corrupt? And if we're going to be technical about it, the Bible says, as an ordained minister, I have authority, and you're a woman and you can't speak, so be quiet. Now, you know she wasn't feeling that. That was even before the Me Too movement.
Oh, my God.
Right? That was a nigga please movement, and she was going to punch me. Don't repeat that word. That was my privilege. As a member of the offended group. Don't go out here and say what Dyson said. No, I did not. Don't even do it. So she told me I was going to hell because I support gay people. I said, how you going to be black? Been a victim of oppression for 300 years and turn around and make a distinction among black people. You acting like ain't no gay people black. And when the lynching tree is out there, are you telling me you don't think any gay people get lynched? Any lesbians get lynched? Are you telling me that white people make a distinction genetically in terms of gender, phylogenesis, or in terms of sexual orientation? If you in a foxhole with a soldier who's gay, all you want him to do is shoot straight.
Okay.
Come on, man. I'm getting jokes out. I need support. I need help out here. And so How you gonna be black and use the Bible to justify and legitimate
Hey.
your homophobia? Or Latino with the kind of cult of machismo to articulate it at the level of your theological ferocity against a gay brother? Or lesbian sister, how you gonna do that? Well, the Bible said you are inferior. That's what some white folk tried to tell us. So you're going to take the same book that was used against you to use it against somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then, tell me, well, they born gay. I wasn't born, They ain't born gay. She said, they chose to be gay. I didn't choose to be black. I said, I got news for you. Some people are opting out. They no longer have full coverage. When it comes to racial collision, they ain't got no insurance. I ain't gonna name the names, you know what I'm talking about. I ain't gonna name no names. I've been there and done that. Y'all are so slow. Been there and done that.
Right. Yeah.
Do I have to be explicit?
Good.
Thank you, sir. Come on. Act like you know. One of my favorite singers is Clarence Carter. But I said, chose to be gay? Is that how it works? How is it that people who ain't gay tell people who are gay how they be? It just amazes me. I said, have you been gay? So how do you know? Have you been gay? I know you used to be rubbing on old people. They were rubbing on sexual difference on their legs. Oh, I'm good today. I'm good. I'm hot up in here. And so I'm like, they chose to be gay? Did you choose to be straight? Is that how it works? You go to your mom at 13, look. I've been looking at these options. And I would be straight because that other choice is a pain in the ass. Somebody wake up. Even though that's a homophobic mark at a certain level. The point is, do you choose anything like that, or are you born as who you are, and then as you get older and you mature, you imbibe unconsciously and internalize without comment the nature of the world around you, and it tells you what's good or bad. It tells you if black is good and white is better. It tells you what is inferior and not. You absorb those lessons. Even if you are gay, you learn to hate the gay self that you are because you think there is something wrong. Some of the most homophobic people in the world are themselves secretly gay.
Yes.
So King would have to say, if injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And not only in terms of queer identity, but in terms of age as well. A lot of people don't like young people, partly just because we're jealous. We think youth is wasted on you. Look at them, healthy, bring bodies, dumb as hell, wasting their lives. Now, we used to be your age too when we were dumb and doing the same thing, but we mad now. We act like we were more intelligent than you at your age. Yes, we were advanced. No, we was not. No, we weren't. No, we was not. And then some people tend to have amnesia. They forget how messed up they were as young people. Right? Next time your parents trying to, lash you for not being socially active, say, show me a picture of you on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, man.
Uh-oh.
Show me you at Tiananmen Square. Just show me some of those pictures. Show me you at Stonewall, where you had the first feminist wave. Most people are not active. And most people lashing you ain't been involved. Very few people are involved in the civil rights movement. Very few people involved in social justice movements. Most of us benefit. Most of us will not protest.
Yep.
So they get mad at young people like Colin Kaepernick. My God, Jiminy Cricket. Why is he bending his knee? He's offending the flag.
Whoa.
No, he's not. He's trying to flag for our consideration the injustice of police people killing black and brown people without legal urgency or moral compunction. NFL lets you play if you raped a woman. Let you play if you had some domestic violence, but oh my God, you can't get no job if you stand up for vulnerable people.
Wow.
Ain't that something?
Yes. That's America.
He has offended the mostly white conservative men who own teams in the NFL. And so now Colin Kaepernick is one of the most hated men in the NFL, which is pretty ridiculous. But the great philosopher Beyonce Giselle knows.
Yes.
Queen B to you.
Yes.
Bow down when you hear her name. Hot sauce in my bag, swag. All right, ladies, get in formation. Fellas, you too. She was announcing from her throne, which is portable, peripatetic, it moves with her. She's at the Sports Illustrated, handing out an award, the Muhammad Ali Courage Award. I think it's called, to Colin Kaepernick. And she made an interesting statement. She said, racism has become so American, they say, that if you protest racism, it looks like you're protesting America. Yes. Man, Beyonce dropping lyrics.
Yes.
Huh? That's almost as good as, you know, I've been drinking. Great lyrics in the 21st century, right? It's almost as good as stay gracious. Best revenge, get your paper. Y'all sleeping, y'all don't even hear it, y'all don't know. So she said that essentially in America, whiteness has become the default identity of Americanness, and therefore it gets rendered invisible and it's seen as universal. So many white people say, why don't you stop talking about race and just be human? They don't recognize the white privilege to be seen as non-raced and non-ethnic. Right?
Come on now.
So you mask your whiteness behind your conception of what it means to be American because they're the same thing to you. But being white ain't the only way to be American.
Yes.
There's all kind of ways. And so when we protest a certain variety and malady of whiteness, we ain't protesting America. We're asking America to be all that it says it will be. Martin Luther King Jr. said, just be true to what you said on paper. So a lot of people don't like young people. They don't like the music. Now, I've been trying to hang with y'all, but this mumble rap, I don't know. We might have to part company on that. You know what I'm saying? No, actually, no. Sir, I do not know what the hell you are talking about. Even genius can't. I gotta go genius. What? That's what they were saying? What? How do you even have a girlfriend? You ain't even got no lines. You ain't got no lyrics you spitting at her. Hey, mama, God. What? What happened to may I have your phone number, please? When the rivets in the system ain't no telling. Well, I love them or I diss them. What happened to that? 10 years ago, I could understand it. Right? I don't even know how half y'all got girlfriends anyway. All this madness you talking anyway. Did it have to come down to me too, even before the end? The madness you spit. Bitch, hoe, skeezer, slut, hood, rat, chicken head. What is that? You got a girlfriend? Shouty? You got a girlfriend? My God, man, if I was young, I'm one of them jealous old men. If I was young, I got bars for days. Even when the bars close, I get you high. I'm going to come out with my debut rap album next year when it's 26. It's going to be called Old Man Love. Man, y'all don't know. They might get there faster, we stay there longer.
Yeah.
Your brain. Don't get caught out here in this age we're living in. So my point is, before I end very shortly here, my point is that a lot of people mad at young people, but I listen to the hip hop, I listen to the insight that you deliver. I listen to some of the pain, I listen to the great philosopher Christopher Wallace.
Yeah.
Used to fuss when the landlord dissed us. No heat, wondered why Christmas missed us. Birthdays was the
Worst days.
damn right I like the life out here. Because I went from negative to positive. It's all good, and if you don't know,
Now you know.
or something else. But he also said back in the days our parents used to take care of us. Look at them now, they're even scared of us, calling for the state for help because they can't maintain. Damn, things done changed. If I wasn't in the rap game, I'd probably have a kilo, knee deep in the crack game. In other words, I'd be selling drugs. Because the streets is a short stop. Either you're slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. Damn, it's hard being young from the slums, eating 5-cent gums, not knowing where your meal's coming from. What happened to the summertime cookout? Every time I turn around, a brother's being took out. Think about Tupac.
Yes.
Somebody wake me, I'm dreaming. I started as a seed, the semen swimming upstream, planted in the womb while screaming. On the top was my pops, my mama hollering stop from a single drop. This is what they got. Not to disrespect my people, but my papa was a loser. Only plan he had for mama was the blanker and abuser. And even as a seed, I could see his plan for me, stranded on welfare, another broken family. He also said, just the other day, I got lynched by some crooked cops, and to this day, the same cops on the beat getting major pay. But when I get my check, they taking tax out, so we paying the cops to knock the blacks out. So you hear him. Even Jay-Z said, no, my teachers couldn't reach me, and my mama couldn't beat me hard enough to match the pain of my pop not seeing me. So, with that disdain in my membrane and on my pimp game, like the world, my defense came. Hear the trauma, the agony. King said, I'm not going to dismiss these young kids I speak to, these young people, violent out of necessity, violent out of lack of resource. He said a riot is the language of the unheard.
Yes.
And so young people must be heard.
Yes.
And the injustice of not listening to young people who are dying at staggering rates, who are killing themselves, who are caught up in a drug game and caught up in a fierce erosion of security. Of course, mid-'80s out here, out west, the political economy of crack was tough. Wasn't no love then. Criminalized them, demonized them. You're pathological and nihilistic. You are a repudiation of everything that's good. Now we got the opioid addiction. We don't criminalize, we medicalize, we hospitalize. What's the catch there? Mostly back in the day, we're talking about black and brown kids and some Asian kids now, and indigenous kids. Now, speaking about largely white kids.
Yes.
Breaking Bad, meth problems, sympathy, empathy. Even the President of the United States of America says we got to do something about it. No such thing. What Clinton did was open up more jails and threw them in. Saw them as super predators. And so we have to be understanding of our young people like King was. And then finally, if we're really going to talk about King now as an embodiment of the best ideals that he articulated then, we got to deal with the issue of gender. And we're having a reckoning now like we rarely had in America. Everybody's scared. Well, let me speak for myself. A lot of us are. Have to deal with, as men, with what we have done, unconsciously, consciously. How we've perpetuated a legacy of inequality. Women have had to deal with so long. The ridiculousness of men, the presumptuousness of men. We understand that. And then we got to talk about the ways in which there's a yawning disparity and an abyss and a chasm between what women make and what men make. Doing the same job. Who was that? Mark Wahlberg, and who was his female star? It wasn't Olivia Munn, was it? Somebody that was in this movie. Anybody know? Who was it? Micheal Williams. Did she win an Oscar or was she nominated for one? Tremendous actress. She got like, what, $1,000? He got $1.5, 1.5 million, doing the same job, reshooting it after Kevin Spacey was exposed and Christopher Plummer was hired to fill in the role on the Getty movie. Women doing the same work, same hours. You know that old Ernst commercial, cartoon that Ann Richards used to quote all the time, that Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did except backwards and in high heels?
Okay.
First of all, I have explained to you who Ginger Rogers is.
Right.
My God, you young man. Fred Astaire, come on, tell me you. Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
Great dancer.
Too far back.
Back in the heyday, the halcyon days.